You're welcome back, and this is the Crossfire. We had Comrade Igwe Achize, and he's the president of NUPENG, and he was able to throw more light on the deliberations ongoing between NUPENG and PENGASSAN currently in Calabar. And we hope within the next couple of weeks, they'll be able to arrive at a feasible decision with the federal government, which will also translate to better life for the Nigerian people. Now, we still have Mr. Duke OPUTA in the studio, and we're still looking at some of the problems with the electricity sector and the oil and gas sector together. Now, comrade, before, I'm already referring to you as a comrade. Okay, well, recall also, while you were talking about some of the problems, you mentioned the issue of privatization. But as regards the energy sector, the electricity sector, we know that privatization is not 100%, but then the only entity under government control is the transmission. That's the TCN, the Transmission Company of Nigeria. And that basically, that has to do with the feeding of, from generation point, transmitting it down to the grids and down to our homes and our businesses and all of that. But the problem is, if you cannot generate electricity, there is nothing to transmit. And when you look at the modular power, the modular operatives in Nigeria, you see that we rely a lot on gas. And that is the reason why all of these vandalisms here and there in the Niger Delta region is affecting power supply across the country. What do you think the government should do to change this? Particularly now, especially when we have the discos, which are private entities,
yes,
and they're not functioning according to capacity.
Yes. Okay. I mean, first of all, let's look at the problems from the consumer's point of view. I think.
Let's hold on, please. Let's take David from Surulere, so we don't lose him. Hello, David. Hello, David. Are you there?
Yeah, I'm there.
Okay. Good morning. Welcome to Crossfire.
Good morning.
Go ahead and make a contribution.
Yes. First and foremost, see, the foundation is very wrong.
Okay.
How could you increase fuel price without making a necessary energy? Nigerian economy depends on energy.
Okay.
Now, people will pay for light that they don't use, and you see increased fuel that's based on that energy that people are using as an alternative.
Electricity tariff also.
Please, we should tell Nigeria, all these our elders, that they should start using telecommunication to compare with light.
Okay, David.
We are generating crude oil in Nigeria. We are not generating the primary resources of all this telecommunication. Those things are foreign-based and foreign-based institutions.
Okay.
Now,
okay,
another thing I want to say is that now, first, they say 12 naira they are paying for subsidy. Now they're having almost 60-something naira, and they cannot pay 30,000 naira for a salary for workers.
The federal government is still considering the upward review of the minimum wage.
Hello?
Yeah, did you get that?
They could have done, a father will put his children as a priority for his budget.
Okay.
Worker is the bedrock of economic of Nigeria. Teachers are complaining, doctors are complaining, and we have the various private companies who are buying fuel to power their business.
Okay.
And now I want to say something about Niger Delta problem.
Okay.
In those days, they use
Can you please wrap up? Can you please wrap up your contributions quickly? Okay.
My final conclusion is that why can't they use the South, like maybe Port Harcourt or Bayelsa as a capital of Nigeria? Because they used Lagos before, they used Calabar before. What is the basic price of Abuja? How much Nigeria is getting as revenue from Abuja?
Okay, David. Okay, thank you so much for your contribution. You were saying something.
Well, he does have a lot to say, but with regard to the generation, the power problem, I mean, there are two aspects of the problem from the consumer's point of view. First of all, there is the issue of actually having power available in the first instance. But then there's the issue of the way in which these companies actually provide the services to us. Let me just say this, that if we have power 25% of the time. That is, in other words, 6 hours a day only. But we know which 6 hours in the day we're going to have power, and that is definite, as is, for instance, available in Ghana. Most Nigerians would not have half the complaints they have today, because that is to say that if you do all the things that you need power for, like iron your clothes, cook your food in the oven if you use an electric oven, and charge your battery, your phones, and so on and so forth. If you don't have power the rest of the time, you probably would not notice it as much. What tends to cause the most inconvenience is the fact that you can start to iron your clothes and then they take power and suddenly you're stuck. So there are two aspects that we're looking at. So apart from actually being able to provide the power for the people, I think the discos should have the decency to organize the service they offer in such a way that the clients actually know what is happening. But let me go back to the actual supply of the power. You mentioned the three tiers of the supply chain.
Yeah.
You have the generation, you have the transmission, and then you have the distribution.
Yes.
The generation and the distribution have been privatized. The transmission still remains within the government, as you say. Now, the main reason why we're having a lot of problems with the two ends of the supply chain that are in private sector is simply the fact that they don't have the resources to invest.
But they're private investors.
Well, that's it, but we did point this out in the first instance.
No, because when you look at the problems, and let me just quickly read out some of the problems, the discos are facing, and they have issues with sufficient energy supply from the grid. They also have old and obsolete networks in terms of their infrastructures. Poor. They have issues with maintenance, which is their business because they're private investors. They have poorly trained manpower. They have poor customer data. They have low meter distribution. They have so many other problems. But virtually every Nigerian has issues with meter distribution. But the problem now is, we're actually at a dead end here. What should the government do? Should they take it away from these private individuals and look for more competent people to give it to give this contract of award to award? Well,
the key thing, I mean, personally, as a consumer, what I would like to see happen is the government making efforts to ensure that there's sufficient funding available to put the infrastructure in place to deliver the service efficiently. There are several ways.
The government should make infrastructures in place for the discos.
The government should ensure that those infrastructures are in place by these privatized companies.
But they don't have money. That has always been their complaint.
So the government can force them, I believe, to basically open up their companies. Nigerians are spending literally trillions of naira every year generating power for themselves individually.
That's true.
So the key thing is there is sufficient money in the economy to fund these developments, but we're spending the money in the wrong places. We haven't got a collective expenditure. We have individual expenditure. So everybody's buying their own generator, buying their own fuel. Even the pressure on the importation of fuel is mostly down to generation of power by individuals. So if the government were to force the discos to basically water down their shares by selling shares to the general public, I would say maybe 40, maybe 50% of their holdings back to the general public. I think they can raise the money necessary to bring in the investment that would get us going. But that should be enforced on them. At the moment, they are greedy. They want to hold on to everything until the point when they can begin to reap ridiculous profits from what is obviously one of the most lucrative industries in the world. So,
so let's go on the short break. By the time we return from the short break, we'll also look at some of the problems with the government looking at generation with other sources, other clean, non-fossil sources of energy generation. We'll be right back. This is the Crossfire. You're welcome back, and this is the Crossfire. I have Mr. Duke OPUTA in the studio, and we're still looking at some of the pertinent issues as regards the country, particularly within the electricity sector, as we're discussing right now. Now, Mr. Duke, before we went to that short break, we're talking about generation. Now, of course, in the MOU which was signed between the government of Nigeria and the government of China, it was factored in that a hydroelectricity power project will be built in Nigeria to also help increase, our capacity, our electricity capacity. Now, but the issue a lot of people are asking is, when will this be done?
When?
How long will it take? And in the MOU, what is the time frame for some of these projects to be achieved? Are we looking at 1 year, 2 years, or 3 years? But these are some of the problems. But Do you think Nigeria should also consider solar, particularly in the area of generating? Because now people have told you, while we went on that commercial break, you talked about solar panels, which could be another better, way we can generate. But then people will also say, and I will also say the cost, it's cost intensive.
Absolutely. I mean, it is capital intensive in the sense that you need to lay out the money in the first instance.
Exactly.
But for most Nigerians who have to generate their own power, it is also cost, or rather capital intensive, because you have to buy a generator set. A basic diesel generator set could set you up, back up to ₦1 million, and a simple pass my neighbor will probably cost you upwards of 50 or 60,000 naira, even as we speak. So ultimately, you will spend money in order to get a generating capacity. My position is that the government is generating money from all sorts of areas, including, as we speak, the subsidy on oil that has been removed. And I would expect that the government should be looking to diversify the sources of generation away from fossil fuels, gas and oil, and coal, and should be looking at solar and hydro. Now, the advantage with the solar is that if the government can come to some sort of MOU with some sort of countries like China or Indonesia, or places that actually are currently producing fairly I wouldn't say cheap, but cost-effective panels, they can subsidize. The government can subsidize solar panels so that people can install this in their homes. That will reduce demand on the national grid, number one. And number two, we'll even be able to supply the national grid with excess capacity when people do have that. That is one option. But the hydro option is also another one. But more importantly, I think the government should look at the legislation that controls the generating of electricity in Nigeria and bring it to the open market so anybody and everybody can generate at any level.
When you say anybody and everybody, are you looking at the state government now? Because I recall
state governments,
during the previous administration of Babatunde Raji-Fashola as governor of Lagos State, the generating capacity in Lagos State was so high that all the public state-owned infrastructures were fully equipped. There was always what you can record as 24 hours uninterrupted power supply. You're talking about the courthouses, the hospitals, and they were able to feed the surplus into the national grid. So should we make it, with the power of the legislation, make it mandatory the state generates what residents in the states consume?
Well, it's not even about making it mandatory. If they open up the market and give, like I said, absolutely anybody the opportunity to generate and sell what they generate in the free and open market, you have a substantial number of investors rushing into the marketplace. There are people in the pipeline who are already, as we speak, building private generating capacity. But I believe, and there are any lawyers out there, they probably correct me, but I believe that there is legislation that controls the way that power is sold, whether you can sell directly to the people, whether you can distribute it yourself, or it has to go back into a conduit that is controlled by the government. And this is where the problem lies. So the power industry should be a free market industry. Once you do that, you have people coming in to build small generating plants. Companies, for instance, that run factories can build their own plants, and the surplus is sold to the neighboring environment. State governments can do the same. Universities can do the same. There's no reason why a large university like University of Ibadan and Suka and places like that cannot have their own power station powering their university and then distributing access to the environment. So this is what the government should be looking into. The unfortunate thing about our country is that there's so much suspicion about not just the unity of the country, but the fragility of our security, that some of the things that are needed to be done in order to progress the country are held onto by politicians because they are afraid of other consequences that might result from it. So ultimately, this is where the legislative arm of the government comes into play, because we blame the federal government, i.e. the executive arm, for doing this or not doing that. But at the end of the day, if these laws are in place and they are bad laws, it's up to the legislature to come out and change them. The executive can direct and even urge them to do it, but they cannot make them do it. We've elected them to actually enact laws, and review laws that will continue to help to improve our welfare and the state of the nation. They are not doing that. So we should be looking to the legislature, looking to Saraki and his people and saying to them, please look at the laws that govern the way power is produced and displayed in Nigeria and see if it's adequate and allows for a rapid improvement.
So if we actually take some of these beautiful, brilliant advices which you're preferring, we still have the issue with distribution, which is key, yes, particularly the discourse. So are you saying that if the government does this immediately, well, how about the discourse? Will it also affect the output of the discourse in terms of distribution, metering, and all of that?
Well,
data, control?
Well, absolutely. There are two things with the discourse. First of all, they've got to have the power to distribute. That's number one. And sometimes they don't have the power to distribute. And when they don't have the power, we don't get power in our houses. Sometimes they have the power to distribute, but they don't have the infrastructure to distribute it. So again, we don't get it. So if they have very poor infrastructure, like all the cables and the transmission lines that they use to the low tension ones into the houses, the metering systems that they have, the billing systems that they have, and even the data, which includes things like who their customers are, they don't even have that. All of these are the factors that make the whole process very uncomfortable for the consumer. For the discourse to be able to correct these things, they need to make investments. And this is where the government comes in. The government can determine through NEC being the electricity regulation people, through NEC, they can determine what is the optimal level of performance in terms of metering, customer services, cable life and structure, and so on and so forth. And these optimal levels should be put to the discourse and given a period of time to achieve them. If they cannot comply because they have no funding, then they should be forced to sell shares to the public to raise the money. And this is the way it should be.
Amazing. And we hope the government officials are listening so they can take interesting pointers from today's discussion and help the lives of Nigerians become better. This is how far we can take on Crossfire today. Thank you so much, Mr. Duke. Thank you so much, Nigerians, for joining us. Stay out of trouble. God bless Nigeria.